Hi everybody, I'm Susan Mulvihill. Welcome to our vegetable garden, which is located in Spokane, Washington, where the hardiness zone ranges from 5B to 6A. Since I shoot a new gardening video every single week, I thought I should give you a proper introduction to where we grow all of our food. Bill and I live on 5 acres, and we feel very fortunate to be here. We chose this area for our garden because it's a nice sunny spot and pretty much out of the wind. You've probably noticed we have a lot of raised beds. And I love gardening in raised beds. For one thing, they're not all the way down on the ground. And for another, you walk around the beds rather than on them like you would with an in-ground planting. And that way the soil does not get compressed. And when the soil isn't compressed, that means plants grow really well. So I wanted to give you a little bit of a history as to how we came up with this layout. We first started out with mounded raised beds, so not ones that were framed with wood, but rather just soil mounded up. They worked great, but the hard part was that we had to rebuild them every year due to soil erosion. In 1992, we decided to build framed raised beds. They're 3 feet wide by 8 feet long and about 10 inches high. We initially used fence boards because the lumber was pretty cheap. But because of that, they didn't hold up very well. But we started out with 2 rows of 6 raised beds. About 2 years later, we switched to using 2 by 10 untreated lumber, usually pine, fir, or larch. We soon increased to 3 rows of 7 beds each for a total of 21. We've stuck with that design ever since. Now, over the years, a lot of folks have asked me, which way did we orient our raised beds? Did we go with east-west or north-south? And I just gave away the answer. But the thing is that way back when we first set up this garden, we didn't know anything about which way the beds should be oriented, because the answer is they should be oriented north-south. And that way, as the sun moves over the garden, it's not shading plants. Fortunately, because of the way our garden is laid out, it has not been a problem. The reason I say that is we've got 3 rows of raised beds. In each row, the beds are spaced 3 feet apart. And then between each row of raised beds, there's a 4-foot wide pathway. So it really hasn't been a problem for us. And certainly when we finally did learn about proper orientation, there was no way we were going to empty all of the raised beds and completely redo everything. So the answer is, yeah, they're oriented east-west. Now, several years ago, we decided that we wanted to expand our veggie garden because we didn't have enough room to grow everything we wanted to grow. So we put in 4 beds here. This is the south side of the garden. And these trees back here, which are mostly spruces, used to be quite short. So the first few years, everything we planted in these beds grew beautifully. And then about maybe 3 years ago, the plants started really struggling. And we thought, what in the world? They're getting watered. What's the problem? Well, of course, the trees were getting taller, so they were shading this area a little bit more. The other thing that was happening, which we couldn't see, is that the roots from those trees were infiltrating the raised beds and are taking up all the nutrients, taking up the moisture. That's a problem. So the last few years we've been just kind of doing what we can to grow things back here, but it's not been going well. So this year we decided we're not planting anything in these 3 beds, and I have discovered that sunflowers grow great in this bed, even with the challenges. So I'm going to grow a whole bunch of them, which will be beautiful to look at, but especially helpful for the birds, the bees, and other pollinators. We also have a small flatbed behind our little greenhouse, And that has been a great area to grow all sorts of things. And as you can see, it's already in the sun, even though this is early morning. So it's doing okay, unless those trees get any taller. We initially used soaker hoses to water all of the raised beds, but it kept clogging up, so we finally switched to a drip irrigation system quite a few years ago. Bill has done a great job of setting everything up. I shot a detailed video on how we use drip irrigation in 2024, so I'll include a link to that video in the description that goes with this video on my YouTube channel. We have a 3-bin compost setup which we built a few years ago. It's a great way to generate a healthy soil amendment for our garden. We also have a compost tumbler for the same purpose. If you're interested in composting, I'll put a link to that video too in the description. We are so fortunate to have this 6-foot by 8-foot greenhouse. Our neighbors across the street gave it to us a long time ago, and it's been a great place for staging plants before it's warm enough in the spring to go into the garden and for other garden projects. We built this hoop house in 2014 primarily for the purpose of growing cold-tolerant veggies during the fall and winter months. It's 9 feet long by 10 feet wide and fits over 2 of our raised beds. But we use it in the summer too because it's a great space to grow veggies that really love the heat, such as cantaloupes, tomatoes, and peppers. Now, while we were building it, I was filming the whole process. So I have a video on it and a blog post that shows the step-by-step instructions and what we use for supplies and so on. It's on my website, and I'll put a link to it on the description with this video as well. So there's going to be a lot of information in the video description. Now, chances are you've probably noticed some of the plant supports in our garden, and I just wanted to highlight them quickly. I did do a video about 3 weeks ago on them with all sorts of specifics, and so I'll put a link to that in the description. But it's made up of 4 individual trellises that go up and over a pathway between 2 of our raised beds, and I use it for growing pole beans. Now, pole beans really need a minimum of 6 feet in height for support for them to grow well. And this just works great. And the best part of all is in the heat of the summer, I can stand in the shade of all of the vines while I'm inside picking the beans. That is really cool. So this is one of my favorite parts of our garden. This is how we support several tomato plants in a single bed. This is a 4-foot by 8-foot long sheet of concrete reinforcing wire, and it's been stabilized by being tied to some heavy-duty fence posts, and this works really great. So this is our squash arbor. I use it for growing winter squash, smallish pumpkins, and cucumbers. They grow up and over the pathway in between 2 raised beds. It looks really cool, I have to say. And the reason we decided we wanted to grow those crops vertically is because that way we wouldn't have vines growing all through the different pathways. So this is made up of 2 cattle panels. So one is up and over here. Here's the second one. On the outside, we've hammered in some sticks of rebar, and that's just to provide good support for the arbor. Bill and I are organic gardeners, and we have been for decades. Since we grow most of our own food, it just makes sense not to use chemicals, right? And it's far easier than you might think. So if you watch my videos that come out every Thursday, you're going to learn all kinds of tips for growing a healthy garden organically. Every year we are good about rotating our crops. Now, crop rotation means planting different types of crops in different beds each year. The two main goals of it are to decrease insect or disease problems and not deplete a bed of the same nutrients every year. So what I do each year is I create a form that shows all of our raised beds, and then I hold on to the forms from previous years, and then we decide where we want to grow the different types of crops. So here's 2024, here's 2025, and here's this year's. And you can see there's a couple beds that are still up for grabs. We haven't figured out exactly what's going in there. But this really helps us stay on track. As I mentioned, what goes hand in hand with crop rotation is soil nutrition. And so having those charts helps me know what to add to the soil of each bed. So if I'm going to grow carrots and parsnips, for example, in this bed, so we're talking root crops, they really need phosphorus because that's what helps promote the root growth. So what I will do is I'll be adding some bone meal into the soil this year, and that is high in phosphorus. If I didn't know that, and I just added in, say, some manure or some type of a high nitrogen fertilizer, I would have lovely foliage and zip for roots. So it's really important to know soil nutrition and know what the different types of nutrients will do for plants. So for example, with salad crops and broccoli, I will give them nitrogen because that is what's going to help promote their growth. If plants need to bloom and set fruit, so for example, squash, tomatoes, peppers, or melons, they will need to have phosphorus just like the carrots do because that phosphorus will help with the blooming and the setting of fruit. So I really like having that chart so I can go through and go, okay, let's see, carrots are going in here, that's got to be phosphorus, broccoli's going here, that's going to be nitrogen, and so on. Now, if this is the first of my videos that you've ever seen, I thought I should share my credentials with you. Most recently, I retired from being a Spokane County Master Gardener after 23 delightful years. I love the Master Gardener program because it has really instilled in me the importance of sharing accurate information. And I love all kinds of gardening, so in these videos, this is a great way to reach more people. I wrote the garden columns for our Sunday newspaper for almost 20 years, and I'm the author of 3 gardening books. The first one is a regional gardening book called the Northwest Gardener's Handbook that I wrote with a colleague. And then the other 2 books are written all by myself. The first one was the Vegetable Garden Pest Handbook. That's all about insects, both the damaging kinds and the beneficial ones, how to deal with the bad guys using organic methods. And that was a joy to write, and the book has been a bestseller ever since it came out. That is awesome. And then the third book I wrote is the Vegetable Garden Problem Solver Handbook. So in the second book, I took care of all the bugs. This is all the other stuff. It could be plant diseases or unusual disorders that aren't caused by disease organisms, critters in the garden, weather issues, germination issues, pollination issues, all of the weird kinds of things that we run into as gardeners. How do we deal with it organically? So I'm very proud of the 3 books I've written, and I have been shooting these videos since 2014. I love sharing what I've learned. If you have any questions or topics that you'd like me to cover in future videos, please either send me an email. My email address will be in the description for the video, or just do a comment on the video and let me know something that you're interested in. Thanks so much for watching today, everybody. Happy gardening.